Hello, everybody. Mike Haggerty here, alongside with Mike Clayton. And our special guest tonight is Troy Nickerson. And it sort of depends upon when you listen to this. Some of our conversation as we move forward will probably we'll be discussing the Olympics, some of which is probably already passed. But I think there's some really interesting things that are out there on the table tonight for us to talk with. And Troy, it's always great to have you around, man. You're one of the easiest guys in the sport to talk to. I remember your days as a wrestler competing and having an opportunity to even ref some of your matches back in the day. And now watching you grow your program at Northern Colorado. I mean, it's been quite a journey. And you just mentioned right before we signed on that you've been there 7 years.
7 years now. I know it's gone fast, too fast.
That's crazy, man. It seems like just yesterday and joking about you being the new kid on the block. And that's not really the case anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a whirlwind, but it's been fun, and I believe every year we're getting better. So it's, I like the building process, and that's why we ended up here to begin with.
And you mentioned too, right before we jumped on the air, that you just got home and you got to turn it around and you're back on the road again recruiting. That's sort of the life of the head coach, right?
It is, and I had my head assistant with me. We were in 6 states in 4 days recruiting. So in a lot of, student athletes' homes, meeting with them, their parents, kind of all over the country. We got back about 2 a.m. this morning and had kind of the day off. I gave everybody the day off, and we've got actually a couple of recruits coming to campus Friday, Saturday here these next 2 days. And then Sunday we're back on the road for another 4 days. So it's a grind, but we love it.
I got to ask you. So is it what you expected coming out as an athlete, being a high level competitor yourself, Troy? Is this coaching gig what you thought it would be?
I think so. I think it's everything I expected it to be. I was very fortunate to have great mentors. Growing up as an athlete in the Cornell program with Rob Cole. He's one of the best in the business. So I feel like I had a pretty good idea of what it was. Obviously every day I'm getting hit with new challenges and, each year, kind of, I feel like getting a little bit more savvy and kind of understanding how things are going to play out and, where I can, how to make my decisions and where we can go to move our program forward.
What's it take to win, Troy? What's the bottom line today in the high level NCAA? We only have something like 80 some programs in Division I, so it's so highly competitive. What does it take to get over the hump for a new program or a program that's maybe been seen as middle of the road coming into this new generation of the sport that we have today? What is it that it's going to take to get it to that next level?
Well, I think that's a very broad question, to be honest, right? Because winning, what is winning? Is that winning a medal? Is it win, being 500? Is it winning a national title? Those are they're totally different. So I think for us, it's been just the process. Our ultimate goal has been just every year making sure we are getting that 1% better. And as long as we're continuing to move in that forward trajectory, moving up that hill, we're winning in my mind. To build a program, you've seen some of the greats, right? It doesn't happen overnight. I mentioned Rob Cole before. You see him build. You see the Brian Smiths at Mizzou. It takes a long time to build something special. And, we're trying to do it the right way. We're trying not to cut corners and, build something that's sustainable, that can last. So we're still moving forward. It's been 7 years, but I think we've come a long way. And, I think we can go a lot further.
Exactly. Michael?
To crack the top 25 in the 2021 season, that's that, and then even to jump up into 17th, right? So you guys were top 20 at that point. So that's got to be a big boost for the program, for all the stakeholders to see we came in, maybe we struggled with, getting the right people, keeping the right people on the bus. And how do you as a college coach focus on that academic piece and still focus on elite level Division I wrestling? That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you want to try to find the total student athlete, and I think one thing we've been able to do a really nice job of is being able to identify talent early and really, finding those guys that are kind of under the radar. They're very good, but they're kind of under the radar a little bit. And then they, by the time they're already committed to us, then they're making those big jumps, beating, the number one kid in their country at their weight and really having that success. So that's kind of where we've made our money. And again, it's just trying to find the total package. I mean, when I got to Northern Colorado, it was a mess. Not only were we probably the worst wrestling program in the country, our GPA wasn't good, our APR wasn't good. We had a lot of social things that we needed to fix from a culture standpoint. So it was a lot, and it was about trying to get the right kids into the program. And again, I mean, every year that we continue to recruit, the goal is always trying to make sure we're recruiting somebody that's a little bit better than the guy before them, and if we're able to do that, we're going to continue moving in the right direction.
How do you do that and still keep the athletes that you've got motivated, right? Because you're trying to get better and better athletes. I get that. Like, that's what we're all doing. But at the same time, like, the athlete that's already in the room is saying, wait a second, you're trying to find somebody better than me? How can I develop that relationship as a coach with my athlete when I'm always looking for the next best athlete? That's tough.
I think you just said it, relationship, right? The relationship piece is key, and just making sure that we have rock solid relationships with all 30 of our athletes, not the 10 starters, all 30 of them, that's key. And again, this past year was kind of that first year where we had some guys that, were 2, 3, maybe 4-year starters in our program that were kind of getting beat out of the starting lineup, right? It's hard, right? It's tough, I mean, obviously you want those kids to be successful and to get to that next level, but we're going to give everybody an equal opportunity, and we're going to just put the best guy out there that, can help the program the most. So having those strong relationships with those kids and, when they're struggling, when maybe they get beat out in year 3, just making sure that they have a solid foundation, that they're really aware of what they are, and what they are is more than a wrestler, and that's really the bottom line with college athletics, right? I mean, it's the underlying scope. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're winning as much as possible. We want to be All-Americans, national champions, but it's about the total student athlete and making sure that they graduate, they're doing excellent in school, they get great jobs and become great alumni down the road, So we try to make sure that those kids are set up for life. And again, if we get to step on the mat and wrestle, that's just a bonus.
Troy, don't you feel like you want those kind of athletes that want you to bring in the better guys, right? You don't want guys in your room that are feeling like they're a protected status, like they're in there and you're going to avoid bringing in other guys to challenge them. If you don't have those guys in your room that want that, to like, hey, get the best guys, coach, I think your program falls short.
100%. I think it's a slippery slope. I mean, obviously, we've got some talented guys on our team right now. I mean, if I could, I'd recruit over Andrew Aliris. I haven't been able to find somebody that I could yet, because he's pretty dang tough. But, that's the mentality we're going into every kid's home with. I mean, we're trying to get the best kids possible. And it's nothing, it's no disrespect to our current student athletes. We're just trying to build the program and bring in the best people to us. So, I really believe that the best kids, they're not worried about who else we're recruiting, right? And we're very fortunate that the kids that are in our room, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be part of building the team, the culture, the whole brand of Northern Colorado wrestling. So, again, I mean, if I got my 157-pound starter, say, and we've got a 157-pounder on campus, he's not, staying away, staying distant when that kid's on campus, right? He's actively trying to recruit him. And that's what we want to see, because it's got to be more than just the individual.
Troy, when was it that you knew that you wanted to be a coach? I mean, did you go into college thinking that this is something that you'll probably be doing, or was there something that really spawned the idea to you that, hey, this is something that I think that I really want to take hold and grab and run with?
Yeah, I mean, it really never crossed my mind. I never expected to be a coach. I never really had that passion to be a coach. I was pre-med in college. I mean, I was setting myself up to have a successful career in there. And I took a year off after my last year of college to, just really study. I was going to go to dental school first. So I was taking a year off to study for that dental exam. And obviously at the same time, I had free time. So I was working with the Finger Lakes Wrestling Club up in Ithaca, New York at that time. And, what I quickly realized was I was spending a lot more time with the wrestling side of things than I was with studying for my dental exam. And, it's kind of a funny story. I actually, anybody that knows me knows I'm extremely punctual. I'm very organized, things like that. Well, I actually missed my dental exam. I showed up. It was, it was on like a Monday, and I showed up on Tuesday ready to take the test, and they're like, "Yeah, that was yesterday." And that's, again, anybody that knows me knows that doesn't happen. Very rare. So that was kind of the moment for me that was like, I've been spending so much time with this wrestling thing because I was very busy. I would be in the room at 6 a.m. doing individuals with guys, and I'd be running youth practices at 8 o'clock at night. So, it was really consuming my life at that point, but I didn't mind it because I enjoyed it so much. And, just thinking through that whole process, I was like, this is where my heart is. This is where I want to be. And again, I started, full-time coaching from there on, and here I am today.
Well, I'll just say this, and I'll turn it back over to Mike, but certainly the medical industry's loss and the wrestling community's gain. So we're glad to have you on our side, man.
I appreciate that.
Michael.
So you walk into an athlete's home and you're recruiting them. You're trying to make them a part of your family and a part of your group. Do you have a set strategy? Are there certain non-negotiables that when you walk out of that house, you want to know about that athlete?
That's tough to say. There's certainly things that I want to know about each individual student athlete, and, for us, when we go on those visits, it's very open-ended. I kind of want to see where the conversation flows. I want to see that it's natural and authentic. I very rarely throughout the recruiting process, give the sales pitch, very rarely. I want kids to wrestle for me at Northern Colorado because this is where they really want to be. I'm not trying to sell them. I'm not trying to trick them or, again, give them a huge financial offer to try to convince them to come, or, they want to come to Northern Colorado because, we've got prettier girls or whatever the case may be. I want them to come here because this is where they feel like they can reach their goals. So we just try to have as many authentic conversations as we can and answer as many questions and find out as much as we can about the student athletes to see, not only is Northern Colorado a good fit for the student athlete, but is it a good fit for us? And again, we've ended up on both sides of the end of those conversations. But ultimately, I feel like the kids that are coming here are really born to be here.
And you researched them pretty hard. Walking into the house, pretty much what you're getting if you come at it.
Absolutely. Recruiting, I feel like is the lifeblood of any college wrestling program, and again, as the head coach, it's a very detailed process. It's easy to pass off, and for us, it's so important that I'm never going to be hands off with our recruiting. I've got excellent assistant coaches that really, do an excellent job recruiting and really do their homework, but I'm going to do my homework as well. And, we're going to kind of, talk about each individual student athlete and say, hey, does this kid fit what we're trying to accomplish? And, we'll come to a decision. And, once we're in on a kid, we're going to go all in.
One more before I turn it back to Mike. So speaking of the details and how you do your research, you kept training logs through high school, right?
I did, yes.
And through college, or mostly just through high school?
Absolutely, all the way through my training.
So, and I heard that, and of course it's all the rumor mill, that if you had a weekend off and somebody that you were going to wrestle was at a tournament across the state, you would drive to scout them, and then that was your weekend.
We did that a lot, and I had a very supportive family, it was just part of the process. We wanted to do our homework and make sure we knew exactly what we were getting into, and I think, scouting, it's one of those tough things, right? Where you want to know enough, but almost too much knowledge sometimes is can negatively impact you because, you're so worried about that other guy that you're not worried about being the best version of yourself. But we definitely did our homework. And, I remember my brother going to one place and my uncle going over here and me and my father going to another place. We definitely did our homework, but again, it was all for the love of the sport too, right? again, I mean, I can't wait tonight to sit down and watch more Olympic wrestling. Right. I mean, it's exciting. It's more than a job. It's, more than a career. This is my life. And luckily my wife and kids understand that today too. So
that helps.
Troy, I can't help but ask you, I know that you finished your career pretty banged up. It was your senior year in particular. I remember one of your matches, you were on my mat, and your shoulder, I think, was pretty much shot. Do you feel like your career was maybe shortened a bit because of that? Did you have intentions of maybe wrestling deeper, longer into your career internationally, or what were your thoughts after you were finished your senior year?
Absolutely. I wanted to keep wrestling, and I did after college for a quick minute. Unfortunately, I just wasn't healthy enough to train the way I wanted to train, to compete at the level that I wanted to compete at. It's hard to say I wasn't healthy enough to continue going. I just really had to change my training so much that it was different. But, unfortunately, I suffered a really bad shoulder injury during my sophomore year of college. And, it was one of those injuries. I mean, hindsight, going back on it, I wish I took 2 years off, and really got it right and took the time to heal properly and get back to 100%. And, for me, it was really my first major injury ever. And, I've had the nicks and dings and little boo-boos here, but it was my first real major injury in college. And, I took the summer off. I rehabbed it, as much as I could, but at the end of the day, it wasn't enough. And I needed to take more time. And, it turned into a yearly thing where I would try to get as much as much rehab in as I could. And then the next season was there, and it was kind of starting the process over. And, 4 years later, I've got 4 shoulder surgeries, and, my shoulder's totally toast. And at the age of 24, they're telling me my next one's a complete replacement. And, I'd like to have some quality of life, when I'm older. And, it just, at that point, it wasn't worth it anymore. And it was obviously very frustrating. So, going back, I certainly wish I had done it right to begin with, and really took that time, because it's hard even today watching the Olympic Games and everything. I mean, I'm only 34. I mean, I've still got that itch, but I know I'm not there.
It goes away down the road.
I'm sure,
the shoulders and knees and all the good stuff that goes with it, but it'll eventually dissipate. So hang in there, man.
Maybe that's why we're destined to get injured in our sport. Maybe that's
it probably saves our world in some ways, right?
Absolutely.
Troy, another thing, real quick, man, we could go down a lot of paths here on this one, but there's a lot of changes happening in the NCAA. There's a lot of changes, like the portal, with kids' opportunities to move and challenge where they're at the moment. If something's better on the other side of the fence, and I think we all can appreciate that it's probably good for the athletes, but things like that have to be a challenge for coaches. There's more on your plate to deal with, and making sure that athletes are I guess catered to in some ways, and make sure that you're doing the right thing by them so that they feel appreciated. I don't really know what all goes into it. We also have a bit of a shakeup going on in the Big 12 possibly coming. So there's a lot of things that are happening, maybe not in total control of a coach, but I mean, how do you absorb all this right now? There's a lot of things that in the coaching world that really didn't exist just 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's extremely hard. It's extremely hard. And, again, I mean, me and my head assistant, we were talking about this on the road yesterday. We were on the road, we were basically moving for 23 hours yesterday straight. It was a grind of a day, and we were just talking about, how thankless of a job coaching is. I don't care what level too. It is such a thankless job,
Now realize we're talking to a group of coaches here, so don't turn them all away from it.
I'm not, and again, I mean, I feel like we're all in it because we want to be in it, Again, I mean, I've never worked a day in my life. I love it, and yeah, I was exhausted when I got home last night, but I love it. It doesn't change anything, but, with a lot of the stuff that's happening in college wrestling right now, we really are putting our livelihood in the hands of 18 to 22-year-old young men, and that's a little scary. It really is. But, that's where I think it goes back to these relationships, and, being able to develop those relationships and, being able to mentor these young men to, turn them into men and really make sure that they're doing the things that are right by them, but also right, for just life in general. I mean, I'm old school, right? I mean, you make a commitment, you follow through, there's no quitting, all that. But, the transfer portal, it makes it interesting, and, again, I remember when that whole first thing came out, and I wasn't a fan of it. I really wasn't. And I remember listening to Pat Popolizio talk about it, and he mentioned that he doesn't mind it one bit, and it's because it's going to force coaches to develop those relationships. And I think that, I mean, it was kind of the light bulb went off. I mean, like, he's exactly right, and it's one of those things that you can kind of forget about sometimes because we're so focused, we're so competitive, we're so focused on trying to get our hand raised and trying to get that W that we forget about that relationship piece from time to time. And we have to remember that that's the ultimate goal, is making sure that those relationships are rock solid and making sure that we're there for the kids. So, that really enlightened me on the transfer portal. With a lot of the other things going on, I mean, with the name, image, likeness, all this. I mean, I encourage it. I think it's good that these athletes are being able to, get taken care of a little bit more. We just need to, as coaches, make sure that we're keeping them, on the forefront of what they're here to do, which is get an education and wrestle.
Do you see the name, image, and likeness being a factor in our sport, Troy, or do you see it more reserved for basketball, football? Do you think how do you think it plays out with wrestling?
I think it's going to be like most sports. I think there's that new factor, where it's going to take off a little bit here, but I really worry about. I mean, if I was a company sponsoring an athlete, I worry about the return on investment. I really do. I don't think it's quite there, and I worry about it sometimes turning into more of a booster issue where boosters are just paying these kids no matter what it does for their business. I mean, it's a write-off. It's a donation, really, more than anything. But I think it will slow down. But at the same time, I mean, you're already seeing it, with the Spencer Lees, the Gable Stevensons. I mean, they're some of the most highly sought after, targets on social media. And I think it's good for the sport. I think those type of athletes are going to get paid at a really high level. I think they're going to be taken care of and compensated. It's going to be that second tier that, it probably struggles a little bit more than anything.
Gotcha. You see that at the high school level now too. So many kids are doing private lessons. They're doing strength coaches. They're doing psychology coaches, and they're just doing everything. They have the best gear. If I'm growing up on a small farm in Iowa, if I'm growing up inner city in a big city, and I just don't happen to have a lot of resources, I don't have a lot of access, it feels like sometimes we can be left behind if we are not the ones who are at that accelerated pace. How do we as a sport, right? We're talking to a lot of coaches at that grassroots level right now. How do we try to recognize that and make sure that we're taking care of kids that both have the means and those that don't, so that all still get the opportunities to grow from, great coaches in our sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, it's an interesting question because, I mean, obviously having access and those resources, there's no question it helps, right? I mean, if you're put in a better situation, you are more likely to succeed. But I think there's also something very, very just reassuring with wrestling that it is a very simple sport too, right? It's a hard sport, but it's a simple sport in a lot of aspects where it's mano a mano. And again, I mean, all I need is, a tiny little wrestling mat and a partner, and I can be whatever I want to be, So I think that's the real fun part of the sport is you can make whatever you want out of yourself. Now, having those access, the access to the resources that are going to help promote your brand, your likeness, things like that. You could certainly be inhibited by not having tools to reach those. But again, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. I mean, I just saw a tweet that Jordan Burroughs put out too, right? The best way to build your brand is win. And he couldn't be more wrong, I mean, again, I mean, look at Tamara Mensah-Stock. I mean, she wins an Olympic gold medal. I mean, she's going to be an international superstar, because she won. She's always had a very infectious personality and is a great woman, right? I mean, everybody that knows her knows she is bubbly. She is a ton of fun. But because she's a wrestler, not a ton of people know who she is. Well, now she won an Olympic gold medal. Everybody knows who she is, and she's going to profit from it, as she should. So, again, I mean, there's nothing like winning. I mean, that bottom line, that's going to help you the most out of anything.
Troy, talk a little bit about what your thoughts are with some of the conference shakeups and some of the things that might be coming down and obviously affecting the Big 12 conference with Oklahoma and Texas and that move, and certainly share with what you can, what your thoughts are personally, and if it doesn't affect you, certainly share that as well. But I'd be curious, as a head coach, what goes into this thought, other than you probably don't have a whole lot of control over it, other than the fact that I'm sure that your people have talked to you about, what are your thoughts as far as the wrestling side goes. But, being here in the Midwest and the central part of Missouri, I've always grown up around the Big 10, the Big 12s, and it just seems like there are no boundaries anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's interesting what's happening now. I mean, we are extremely happy to have Mizzou back in the conference. I think that was a great move by the Big 12, letting them back in. I mean, I understand why they didn't initially let them in. Mm-hmm. Which could be a very similar situation with what's going on in Oklahoma right now, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on. Selfishly, we'd love to have Oklahoma still in the conference, right? If they're going to go to the SEC, I mean, I get it. It's money, it's football. I mean, they need to do what they need to do as far as an institution goes, but we would love to have them in the conference. Now, the conference might decide against that. That's out of our control. I can't really worry about that. What I can worry about is trying to get 10 best athletes I can to the tournament and building the conference in that way. So I feel like we've got a great group of coaches. The Big 12 has been very supportive in wrestling. It's only continued to get better. I think we had a very strong conference last year, and unfortunately we didn't really get to show it because of the way the allocations went. And, I think we did get short end of the staff with how that worked with the allocations with COVID and the NCAAs. But I really feel strongly that this year, I mean, is going to be the best year ever for the Big 12. And, just having so many different teams in there, I think it just makes everybody better.
Troy, what are you hearing as far as COVID goes right now? As of today, what's your take on the NCAA season? I know I've got a call with our officials coming up next Monday, and I was informed that it's a fairly important call to get onto. So I'm kind of anxious to hear what that's all about. But what's your take on where we're at today, and what are your expectations moving forward?
I wish I could tell you. I have no idea. I mean, from what I'm hearing, if you're vaccinated, there's no more testing, no more contact tracing, which, would be huge. But again, I mean, you can't force vaccinations either. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into all that, but it'll be interesting. I'm actually missing a COVID call with our university right now. I'm doing this.
Sorry about that.
But I don't really know. I think things will be different than last year. I mean, nobody expected last year to go as it did. It was the first time for all of us. I know if I had it to do over, there'd be a lot of things that we would do different. I think our student athletes did an excellent job of staying safe. But it's the first time for everybody. So there's certainly a lot of things I would change, and we're just going to roll with the punches. I'm really trying not to worry about it. Because again, it's one of those things that's out of my control. We'll hear, what we need to do to make sure we keep our student athletes safe. And we're going to form a plan that's going to be the best possible plan to make sure that they are safe and try to get them to the national tournament.
Troy, it sounds like that's a big tool for you. What I can control, I'm going to put my focus, put my energy on. Things that I can't really control, I may monitor it, but I'm not going to really throw all my eggs into that basket. What are some of those benchmarks that have helped you transfer from being an athlete to being a successful coach, right? Any of those, like, wow, I just got hit in the head, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing as a coach.
I mean, I certainly, think back on my career, and, how I would have liked things done. If I were a student athlete, I try to put myself in the student athlete's shoes and really see, how is this going to affect them? And at the same time, I mean, I learned a lot from my mistakes. Again, I mean, being an athlete and being a coach are, they're 180s. I mean, as an athlete, you almost have to be very selfish to reach your goals. It's just part of the sport a little bit. And I was a very selfish athlete. And, as a coach, it's a complete 180. I mean, it is not about me. It is about these student athletes. So, it's kind of like that, I mean, what's the saying? I mean, you want to put, 80% of your effort into 20% of the tasks, right? Versus the other way around. I mean, I really try to focus on the things that matter and, those smaller details, whether good or bad, they're not going to really affect the overall goal and the mission and, the direction that the program's headed.
Troy, you mentioned something that just really sparked something in my mind that I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that you have made some mistakes along the way, and my curiosity would be, what is it that you've done differently, maybe in the last couple of years, than when you first started out as a head coach? I mean, where have you seen yourself evolve over that time period? I think our coaches that are listening would be excited to hear how a Division I coach comes into the program and starts out, and how he evolves. You're not the same person or the same coach that you were when you first started.
No, not even close, again, I mean, I'm far from perfect. I still make mistakes on a daily basis. We all do. And we got to make sure we continue to learn, because I think when we get in that mindset that we know it all, that's where you're going to struggle, but early on, I mean, I was 27-year-old head coach, right? I think I was the youngest head coach in the country. And, I was motivated. I wanted to win, and I knew I could, I mean, one example, I mean, I knew I could recruit at a really high level and, recruit great wrestlers into Northern Colorado. And, I lost sight of the big picture, and while we had great wrestlers in our program, our culture probably wasn't where it needed to be to really be successful. I kind of tried to take a shortcut to success. And I realized quickly, really on, that, there are no shortcuts, and so, I mean, we really stopped what we were doing and took a total 180. And we said, hey, we're going to build this thing from the building blocks, from the foundation, and we're going to make sure it's here to last, and I think that's something that's really important, especially in college wrestling right now, when you see these, wrestling programs still continuing to get dropped, right? I mean, usually it has nothing to do with the wrestling success. You're talking about social issues, you're talking about academic success. And, when those things are solid, I feel like it's really hard to drop a program. Making sure your program is as cheap as possible to the university is another one, right? The finances have to be right. We're very fortunate. We make money for the university here at Northern Colorado. So we've really created a foolproof machine that, is going to continue to be successful. And, now is where we can kind of, start again, continuing to bring in those kids that are going to push our limits a little bit, where we're going to make sure that we're, trying to continue to get better on the wrestling side as well. So, I think the big thing is making sure that you don't try to take those shortcuts and, don't worry about the timeline. I mean, I think if you're, thinking about, what's next, it's hard to be successful where your feet are.
Troy, what brought that about? What was there some moment that you said, hey, things aren't going in the direction that I want them to go? I mean, that's a huge admission to say that you made a 180 and wanted to really build the program versus just winning. As I took what you just said, my question to you is, was there something in that formula, or did you see something in your program that you weren't satisfied with? What was it that made you decide that?
I mean, I think I knew all along what I was doing, and I thought, we'll be okay. We can kind of, we can get through the issues that we're having, we're, again, I mean, maybe somebody's struggling with academic eligibility, or, somebody got in trouble and things like that. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, I wanted to be able to sleep on a Friday, Saturday night. I didn't want to be, waiting for my phone to ring, and somebody got in trouble, or, again, we're having eligibility issues, things like that, So we really wanted to make sure that, hey, all these things that really matter in the eyes of an administrator, they're rock solid, and then the winning will help. It's different when you're building a program from the ground up. I think, you look at probably some of these, big time football programs and whatnot. I don't know what their GPA is and things like that. But again, when they're winning national titles, it probably doesn't quite matter as much. But when you're still trying to scratch the surface, it's those little intangible things that matter to the administration that are really going to matter. And you got to make sure you're rock solid in those areas.
Troy, with that administration piece, so much of the success of our athletes is because we're able to push them to reach the limits that they may not even know they have. And to do that, sometimes you've got to be very creative, but you also have to be very careful to not cross that line. And if an administrator sees you trying to get close to that line, how important has that relationship been with your administration to be able to give your athletes that full level of push without going too far? Because it could be tough if you're right there.
Yeah, no, I think, it's communication. It starts with that relationship. Again, I just played golf with, my administrator today, and again, he knows everything that's going on with my program. He knows I push him really hard, but we've developed such a great relationship where, he knows me well enough and I know him well enough where, if I'm pushing him on something, he knows what we can kind of say, yep, let's run with it. Or, hey, you need to stop bugging me, and again, just from that relationship, I know, hey, I better pump the brakes a little bit here, but I think they appreciate, how much we want to win. But again, I think there is a time for everything. And, again, there's a process and there's, wrestling is the most important thing to me. He's got 17 other sports to worry about. So again, I think just falling in line and making sure you understand where somebody else is coming from is critical, and it goes to the same way with student athletes. We communicate a lot with our student athlete parents, and, a big piece of that is, we get to know our student athletes at a very high level. It's really hard to really know them better than their parents. We get 4 or 5 years with them, and we get to know them pretty well in those 4 or 5 years, but their parents have been with them 18 to 20 years, So when we're having issues with our student athletes, I'm constantly staying in communication with my parents. Hey, this is what we're struggling with. And I might even know, what I want to do with that student athlete, but, I'm almost kind of cross-referencing him with the parents saying, hey, what do you think? And making sure we're on the same page, because then if, I do push that student athlete to those limits, at least I know the parents are on my side because we've talked about it. They know what the plan is, and we're able to move forward.
That's smart. That's awesome.
Troy, let's shift gears just a little bit. We're right in the middle of the Olympics, kind of getting towards the tail end, actually, of the wrestling side of things. But we're seeing some really good things out of freestyle, and in particular with internationally in the Olympics with the medal count, and we still have some opportunities with Snyder coming up yet, and some other people coming up. But my question to you is your thoughts on the regional training centers and how they've affected the big picture of international wrestling for the United States.
Yeah, I think the regional training centers are great. I think they are. They're showing success, right? Since we've continued to build these regional training centers, we're having more and more success. And I think the big reason is just these athletes are more comfortable training at home, right? They don't want to be in one location. They don't want to be at the Olympic Training Center for 12 months out of the year. They want to be back with their families and in a comfortable situation around the coaches and their families that they know. That's going to make just training easier, and I think when we can make their lives easier, it makes everybody better. I think the regional training centers continue to grow, which is a good thing because we're able to pay a lot of these RTC athletes and, being able to keep them in the sport longer. But at the same time, I think, it also makes it very hard to find assistant coaches, because these guys are getting paid so dang well that it is, it's challenging because they're getting a great salary to just train. Well, why would they want to go coach? That they can just keep training. So it makes it a little difficult, but I think the overall mission of the regional training centers and what they're supposed to do is working. And I think they're going to continue to grow, and again, you're seeing the women really get into it. You're seeing some Greco regional training centers popping up. I think it's only going to continue to add to success for America.
And one of the things I wanted to speak on too, and maybe Mike would be better to follow up with this, but your involvement with our coaches council now, and the role that you bring in, the youth and the vigor of a young head coach at a major university. I think that has been a big lift, and Mike and I have had this conversation many, many times. Guys like you and Guerrero and people who have been at the Division I level, great athletes, great coaches, and serving on our coaches council. What are your thoughts on what our coaches council could actually do in moving the needle a little bit more with whether it's a regional training centers or whether it's bringing more information to our coaches? What's something that you feel like our coaches council has to offer? This would be a pretty good time to maybe promote that here.
Yeah, I think the greatest thing is, just making sure everybody knows that we're available and we're out there, right? And being able to understand that, hey, we are here to represent the coaches and not just the international coaches, not the college coaches, not the high school coaches in general, and being able to say that, hey, we are a resource for you guys. And, understanding that without grassroots wrestling, I probably don't have a job. That's just the reality. So it really is all levels. And we want to make sure that, it's a big goal of mine and a big passion of mine to make sure Colorado wrestling at all levels continues to grow. And yes, some of it is selfish because that's going to help me develop a better recruit someday. But we want to make sure that we're growing wrestling at all levels to make sure that we can continue to move the sport forward. So I think the big thing is just making sure that everybody knows that we are available. We're here to share resources, to share knowledge, and just be here to be an ally.
Mm-hmm. So wrestling covers about 24 hours a day. Sleep covers 6. You probably eat for 2. You're on the road for 23. So given or take maybe a 65-hour day, how important are things like time management, organization, and then on top of all of that, you still volunteer for committees like the National Coaches Council and other organizations that you work with. Why is that so important? One, how do you do the time management? And two, why is it so important to still be involved in so many other activities in addition to that primary job that you hold?
Well, for me, the primary reason is just the giving back, right? And just making myself as a resource. Hopefully I'm a positive resource that can actually add some input and help. If I'm not, Hags, tell me. But, I do want to try to help grow the sport in any way possible. And, again, it's just, it's that passion for the sport that we want to continue to see it grow, and I am a firm believer that with anything in life, it's a pet peeve of mine when people say, I was too busy. Well, if it matters to you enough, you find time, and again, there's going to be other things that are sacrificed because of those, but the things that matter to you, you're going to find time, and helping grow our sport and any way possible is really important to me, but you do need those breaks too. There's only so much time in a day, like you said. Again, we got home super early this morning. We worked from home today, and we were on the golf course this afternoon. So I think those breaks are important. My family is really important to me. Luckily, I've got a very understanding wife that understands how passionate I am about this sport. And she doesn't always like that I'm gone all the time. She understands it. And, we're very fortunate to have that type of bond and relationship where she understands how much it does matter to me, but also making sure that I'm spending time with them and keeping that balance in life. I think that is extremely important. And, with my coaches too, I always tell them, hey, I'm going to push her really hard, but when you need that break, you can't be afraid to ask for it. And as wrestlers, it's really hard to do, to admit that, hey, I'm tired. Right. But, I want to make sure that they're living their best lives, that all their ducks are in a row, because if they aren't, I'm not going to get the most out of them as a coach. So I encourage them to make sure that they're taking care of business, whatever that is on their side of things, as well as just making sure that they're continuing to grow as well. Obviously I'm mentoring my coaches in this area at a pretty high level, but, I don't know it all. And, so I encourage my coaches to have those mentors, just like I have mentors out there where I can pick their brain, cry on their shoulder if I need to, just get off some steam if I need to, whatever that may be. I think having those mentors in coaching is huge. And I really stay on my assistant coaches pretty heavily to make sure, hey, when was the last time you talked to your mentors? Those people that are important to your life. Make sure you're reaching out to, just get maybe just a second opinion on things that we're doing, and make sure that, we're bringing everything to the table to make the best decision possible for our student athletes.
And how big is that recovery piece, not just for the athletes, but for the coaches too? Like, do you tell your coaches, like, hey, buddy, you just need to go fishing today? Like, take the day, go hang out. And how big is that recovery piece?
I think it's extremely important, and everybody's got a different limit, and, my willpower, my strength, I can go a lot longer than most, and I make sure that I tell my coaches, hey, stop trying to keep pace with right? Like,
I love it.
You can see it in them, right? It's like employees. You can see it where they're starting to wear down, and I tell them, like, I don't want to see you. My head assistant, he took a trip earlier this summer with his girlfriend. That he went to Puerto Rico. They were on vacation, right? And he's telling me how he's got his computer, he's got Wi-Fi, he's doing this, doing that. I was like, stop. Like, basically, give me your computer. Like, I don't want you doing anything for these next 5 days. Like, we've got it covered. The rest of us here, we've got it covered. You'll be fine. Just take a break. So you got to force it on them a little bit. But again, I think that's just like any good manager, right? You got to be able to see those things in your employees and making sure that you're keeping them happy and not driving them to that other side.
Here's an old dog talking to a young dog. I once had a college wrestling coach tell me, he said, Hag, it's okay to play golf. He goes, just don't tell anybody you're any good. Because that's a bad thing. If you're getting good at golf, you're not spending enough time in the wrestling rooms. Basically, what he was telling me.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
So, how is your golf game?
It's probably it's one of those hobbies that I do have that I try to play at least once a week. I've got a pretty good crew here that I play with some friends, some donors, and my administration as well. So it's probably getting to that point where people might start questioning how much time I'm spending in the office. I might have to make sure my handicap stays up, just for.
Don't let anybody know.
Thank you, couple.
I tell you, my game was a lot longer when I lived in Colorado. I was at least 10, 15 yards longer in Colorado. It might be older age, though. I'm not sure whether it's old age or it was the altitude, but
I think it's that thin air. That thin air will definitely make the ball travel a little further.
Oh, goodness. Well, Troy, real quick before we wrap everything up, what are your thoughts on the Olympics right now?
I'm super excited about Team USA. I think they've been wrestling really well. Obviously, like any big event like this, there's, highs and lows. You're seeing people accomplish the biggest dream of their life. You're seeing total disappointment. I mean, it's draining to watch, you know, and especially knowing so many of these athletes personally, you know, you feel for them, you know, seeing, you know, Kyle go down last night. I mean, it's heartbreaking, you know, because you know how bad he wants it. But that's what's very unique about this sport, right? I mean, it'll eat your heart out, and you know, again, that's part of the process. And you know, when you ultimately see those athletes accomplishing their goals, it's you know, it's so big. I mean, somebody like Tamara, right, who's we've all known she's been that great for a long time, to actually get over that hump is huge, you know. And you know, see somebody like David Taylor, who you know, he's kind of been, you know, I mean, he's so dang good. I mean, I could probably use a better word, but I hate saying like the bridesmaid a little bit, right? He's kind of been right there, second, third, you know, not quite making those teams. To see him win an Olympic gold medal, it's like, that's the David Taylor we all know, right? Like, he's always that good. Just unfortunately, there's other great wrestlers in the States here, you know? So it's very exciting. You know, I hope we have, I hope we can sweep, you know, the rest of our matches. I think if we do in freestyle, we're going to be able to bring home the team title, which, you know, would be very special. But, you know, I think it's been a great tournament, and I'm excited to continue watching here.
Fantastic. Mike, anything else?
Man, there's just so much that you would want to just throw in to narrow it down to one. How do you as a coach manage that disappointment for the athletes at the same time you're managing the excess, right? Because you've got the success of the athlete that you're excited to work with, but you also have the frustration of those and that anger. How do you play the different roles that you need to play, or is that something that you farm assistants or other team members? Like, how do you manage that? Because I know, like, that's not an easy juggle.
Yeah, I think it's different with each student athlete. I mean, again, developing that relationship, knowing what each athlete's expectation is huge, you know. And you know, again, I know we'll go into goal meetings, right? You know, and every one of my athletes tells me how he wants to win a national title. Well, you know, I have to have some very realistic conversations with some kids, you know. And it's like, hey, let's try to maybe get a takedown in practice first, you know? So, you know, it just being real and honest with them, you know. I mean, I've always been a big fan of, you know, playing down expectations and overachieving. You know, I think there's a lot of positive to that, but at the same time, you need those athletes to believe that they can be the best in the world, you know? And again, it's kind of that, you know, if you shoot for the sun and you land on the moon, well, it's still pretty freaking good, right? So I think each athlete, you just need to play with them a little different, and, you know, see what their motivation is. And once you know their motivation, you know kind of how to communicate with them the right way. That's
really cool. No, this is exciting. It's been fun following you when you're an athlete, and to see your success and the discipline that you put around it, and to see how you've carried a lot of those same skills as a coach, but also found the way to make those adjustments that great coaches have to do. So keep up the great work. I love coming up and watching. I know I had a couple boys wrestle for you, so it's always great to come up. Exciting environment at Northern Colorado to watch a match. So we'll have to get up there soon.
We're continuing to grow it, so I appreciate the support.
Troy, I can't thank you enough for joining us, man. It really is a pleasure. And like I said, when you joined us, it's always a pleasure just to sit down and talk to you. You're one of the great people in the sport. You bring a lot of energy, doing a great job at Northern Colorado, and wish you all the best going forward. Look forward to visiting with you on our Coaches Council calls in the future, and seeing if we can't move the needle a little bit more. And hopefully we'll get a chance to visit again soon sometime.
That sounds good. I appreciate you guys having me tonight.
Thanks.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for joining us, everybody, for our Heads Up podcast. We'll be back with you next time. Take care.